Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this first thematic session. I am Sebastian Turbo, I am the Director of Content at WISE, and I will have the honor of moderating this first session on redesigning education systems for the future. Indeed, as we move into the day, this session will question two things: why education systems need to be rethought to adapt to a fast-changing world, and two, what we can learn from on-the-ground leaders who are currently innovating and changing the education landscape. They will tell us how they are approaching these changes, what they consider to be top priorities, the challenges they're facing, but also the design principles, the tools, and the innovations that they are currently implementing. To continue our discussion on redesigning education systems, I'd like now to invite my three fellow panelists on stage. So please welcome Ms. Vicky Colbert, Ms. Nieves Segovia, and Dr. Stefanos Gialamas. Please. Thank you for joining me on stage. Let me quickly introduce the three of you before we start our discussion. Let me start with you, Vicky. You are the founder and chairperson of the Escuela Nueva Foundation, based in Colombia. And we also have the honor of having you as our 2013 WISE Prize for Education laureate. Nieves, you are the president of the SEK Educational Group. You operate 9 schools, of which 6 in Spain, and you also operate a university here in Madrid, Camilo José Cela, right? And finally, Stefanos, you are and have been for the past 12 years the president of the American Community Schools of Athens in Greece. Prior to that, you were a provost, dean, and professor in various universities in the United States. I must say that it's a pleasure for me to have the three of them on stage with me, because they are the perfect incarnation of the spirit of WISE. The three have a clear vision of what the education of the future should look like from a very macro, global system level, but also the three of you on a daily basis are on the ground trying, innovating, testing, maybe failing, to give life to meaningful and impactful learning experiences. And so, to start with the big picture, with the system-level conversation, I have maybe a simple but tricky question for the three of you. If I had the power to nominate either of you as the Minister of Education of the world, yes, why would you say we need to rethink education systems, but more importantly for this morning, what would your 2 or 3 key priorities be? Vicky, may I start with you?
Well, first of all, education systems are not changing as fast as the rest of society. We all accept that. I always compare the health sector with education. If you bring a doctor from 100 years ago into a hospital today, that doctor is totally, lost. Everything has changed in health. If you bring a teacher from 100 years ago into a classroom today, that teacher is not so lost because everything has changed except the way of learning. So I think that's the first thing I would like to say about systems. Now, if I were minister right now, and I have to, following what Sandy said, design thinking, you have to know what's happening, at least in my region and in Colombia, where I come from, and in the Latin American region, where you have 50% of children in 4th grade do not understand what they read, and this is our reality. So we have to have our feet in the ground. But with this issue, I would think of 3 things.
Go ahead.
As minister, if I would have the political decision. One is, considering this 50% do not understand what they read in Latin America, I definitely would have to improve literacy skills. I mean, this is a reality in our context. before I go a little bit beyond. And then I have to think of what's happening to our teacher training institutions in Latin America. We love academics, but we love to give conferences on active participatory learning. So I would change the way we would train our teachers, because we have these contradictions of promoting conferences while we want to change the way teachers work. So we had to do it in Escuela Nueva. We had to compensate to what teachers' colleges were not doing. One, that teachers go through the same activities and practical activities as they want to have with their children in their training, so as to go beyond this contradiction.
So less theoretical, more...
Much more practice-oriented, at least this
on
is...
what's happening in the classroom.
Exactly, and that we train the teachers with the same methods that they're going to be using with their children. We had to have 3 things in place before we had a rollout. We had to have evidence, empirical evidence. We need that in Latin America. We produce too much poetry, not very little science. And I think we inherited that from the Spaniards. Second, we have to think about feasibility. Anything we do has to be viable politically, technically, and financially. This is the way we bring down innovations to reality. So I think this is crucial. And of course, we have to have demonstration sites. We have to show the way so that teachers can have visual images of where they're going to, because we have too many words in Spanish and too many speeches. So I think these are like 3 crucial issues. Now, one final decision. So the first thing is the literacy dimensions, change the way we're doing with the teacher training in our countries. And third, I would put the best teachers in first grade. A very simple decision.
And why the first grade compared to the 6th grade or the 12th grade?
The first grade. If we want to tackle Latin America as we have the evidence at the moment, I think that would be just a very quick and fast decision that we would need to do.
Okay, I think we'll come back to...
And then, of course, there are more things I would like to do, you know. It's just now imagining for the future. like the whole notion of challenging the conventional teacher-centered way of learning.
Okay, so in your case, a big focus on teachers.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. Nieves, can we maybe hear from you?
Hello, good morning.
And so you're not the Minister of Education of Spain, huh? It's the whole entire world.
Okay, this makes things easier in case I know there is a representative from the ministry, so I won't be taking the role at all. Well, you asked us to disagree, actually, but I couldn't agree more with what Vicky just said. So I don't know if we're going the right way. Anyway, I did want to and this is important, I think, to thank WISE and Banco Santander for bringing to Spain this meeting, this big conversation. We're currently undertaking this big debate about education reform. So I think it's very pertinent, and I'm sure that what's going to be shared today will be a source of inspiration for our reform. So thank you very much. In terms of the why do we need to talk about education change, whether we call it change, transformation? Because I feel there is this fantastic game, and it's being played elsewhere. And where things are happening, where change is happening, it's a game about the future, about its speed, of course. And I feel education should be MVP of the game, and it doesn't look like we're really in the field. Sometimes I do have this feeling. And if we think of how important education was for the Industrial Revolution, and the relevance towards which we're consistently walking in this 4th Industrial Revolution, the education sector, I definitely think there are things that need to be done urgently. Even if urgent means, as we just listened to, doing things very slowly, but they need to start the sooner the better. In terms of what are the priorities, I would think about a certain number of steps. And first is redesigning or understanding, not redesigning, understanding this new fantastic landscape for education. It's completely new. And we sometimes we don't even see its horizon, and so it's very difficult to walk towards it. And why is it a landscape filled with, I feel, as many challenges as opportunities? First of all, because it's bigger It's so much bigger, this new landscape. This football field, if I continue with the same metaphor. And it's bigger because we are in the learning society, because we have a talent economy, because we talk about globalization of cultural and social issues, because all those aspects, all those dimensions of our time today and the time to come are relevant to education and to learning. And then because it's deeper, it's not just bigger, the landscape, it's deeper because, as Professor Heppel frequently reminds us, we know so much more about learning right now. There's so much more we know. We have new technologies, we have loads we've learned from neuroscience, we have big data, we can predict performance, there's so much more we know. So we have a new landscape, it's bigger and it's deeper and we need to work there. But who are we inviting to the game? And I think we need to invite many more stakeholders into the education debate. We cannot be the same once again and again, informal education, talking about same issues, probably with the same mindset with which we created some of the problems we need to tackle. So we need to have many more agents on board. And this is one of the reasons why this event is particularly useful, because we're not just education people. There's many others, and this is great. We need entrepreneurs with whom we can have a conversation. We need the corporate world. We need, of course, students in the middle, but not just passive students. We've heard a lot about this, but really active students. We need them, and we all need to feel as we are students because we are all learners. So let's invite new players. And finally, what are we going to play? And I feel, what's the game about? And I feel it's a completely new game too, because we need really to make this lifelong learning concept become a reality. We still work in boxes. We say, well, this is a school, this is a university, whether it's undergraduate, and then it's different to graduate school, and then we have the corporate world, so on, so on. This is the entrepreneurs here, and that's not the way it works right now. We know things are more of a flow. We need to create a real learning flow, where there is a continuum of learning experience through which we go in and out, and that really allows us to have a new perspective, back to Mark's comments, allows us to have a new perspective of what learning is about. Once we've understood this whole thing about the game, they will probably be able to decide on the first steps, on the first priorities to be decided according, of course, as Vicky was saying, to the particular context it has to serve.
Okay. By the way, quick point on you here in the room. My team is telling me that there's about half of you who come more or less from the education sector and field, and another half of you who are more from the corporate, the business world, and the entrepreneurship world. So a very good mix of these two worlds, which will be addressed later when we talk about higher education and entrepreneurship. So a good mix of people with us here in the room. And so, Stefanos, you are the minister. What do you do?
Well, what did I do to you to call me minister? You know, I don't know. So, well, I happen to be really privileged because I have the two worlds. I spent 20 years in the universities and now 12 years in the K-12. And as a mathematician, I like very well-organized but also innovative approaches. So for the last 6-7 years, we're implementing a new educational paradigm that has three interrelated components. The first component is a educational philosophy, a holistic, meaningful for the students. For example, what do you think about 400 little kids in elementary school learning mathematics with dogs? So in first grade to fifth grade, all of our mathematics are taught utilizing dogs. First grade, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And why we're doing that? Because that's meaningful to the kids. The mathematics is meaningful. And who are the enemies on that? The parents who say, wow, our children don't do mathematics. They play with the dogs. So the curriculum has to be meaningful. That's number one. Second one is that we have to have a learning and teaching methodology that it is relevant to everyday life. We go and pay our bills online or person to person or making a phone call. So our teaching and learning has to resemble that, has to reflect that. So all of our teaching and learning has to be hybrid. So it has to be a combination of face-to-face learning and teaching and online. But when we have the face-to-face, we should not waste our time on knowledge and information. In any Google information, you get it. But to spend time on decision-making, analysis, and creativity. But how you can do that? There's only one way. You have to eliminate the fear of failure. If the faculty, we had a beautiful example here that the teacher went over there and the administrators did not even bother them. 7 years ago, a teacher came to me and said, what about if we teach the kids with dogs? And I said, why not? We had no idea. And today, the kids perform much better because it's very important for them to know how much food the dog eats and how much the food costs. So the second one is really the teaching and learning methodology has to resemble what we're doing in everyday life. So when I am in New York, I send problems to my students because occasionally I teach a class. And I tell them, give me how many different ways I can go East 92nd Street and 3rd Avenue to 46 East and Lexington. That's real, that's meaningful to the students. They stay up all night. So therefore, this is very important. The third, but more important, is the leadership. We are talking about toys and technology and one-to-one and all of these are not useful unless we have appropriate leadership. So what we did, we went back to the ancient Greeks and we call it aristia, which is excellence with ethos. So therefore, what we do, we entrust our students. The students are architects of their own learning. They are ethical. We don't have really to go after them to see if the work that they do is theirs. Second, the teachers. The teachers are inspirators. You cannot really today transform learning unless you inspire. As Dalai Lama says that if you're in love with what you do every day, you will never work a day in your life. How many of our academic leaders work a day and how many they don't? And as we close that interrelated element, the creativity starts with two elements. First of all, eliminate fear. And second, don't give too many toys, because more toys really die creativity. So, and I will close this segment with the following thing. 18 months ago, Greece got the worst challenge with all the refugees. So 62 of our kids, they said, what about if we find a way that we can make a difference? So they sit down, they organize a program, we call it Youth to Youth, educate all children, figure out what money they need for that to support, and as we're talking today, they were able to serve 60 refugee unattended kids, and out of these 60 kids, 8 they are integrated in an international school. For them, had 3 things. First of all, had a meaning. The meaning was serving humanity. Second one, it was the creativity because it was not given to them any toys. And third, they didn't have the fear of failing. That's what I think is to start with, and what we call it the educational paradigm, which is morphosis, over the Greek word morphosis, which is not just skills, but it is the way that you learn as you become and growing older.
Thank you, Stefanos. I think, Vicky, you wanted to react on one of Stefanos' points.
I wanted to reinforce what you said, not so many toys. I think the beauty of what we're trying to do with Escuela Nueva is precisely we work with the poorest and the most vulnerable schools where you don't have anything, nothing, not even internet. I mean, most of the rural schools in Colombia do not have internet. So in a way, it's very interesting to see why necessity is the mother of innovation. And you really have to go through design thinking when you have a reality where you don't have all these toys. So I think the beauty of this is that we were forced, because there were so many problems, nothing worked, we were forced to think systemically from the beginning. And second, we really had to emphasize on a paradigm shift that everybody's talking about. You know, really a paradigm shift from transmission of knowledge to social construction of knowledge. And we started talking about the new role of the teacher for the 21st century 35 years ago in Colombia, because that was the need. When a teacher in a rural, isolated, invisible school doesn't have anything. And they have to work simultaneously on a multi-grade context, which exists in all countries where there's low density of population. And where a teacher has to handle first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, you're forced to go into personalized learning. You're forced to go into cooperative learning. You're forced to go beyond the traditional role of the teacher as transmitter of information. So, before introducing technology, which we don't have internet in the rural schools, you're forced to change your pedagogical model. And I think just introducing computers and tablets without changing your pedagogy will not, we will be facing the same problems at a higher cost. So you have to tackle the learning paradigm, and I think this is the most important thing.
I mean, interestingly, one of my takeaways from hearing you is that none of you put technology as such as one of your top 2 or 3 priorities. For many people, that's always surprising. At WISE, people think that when we're talking about innovation in education, we're actually talking about technology in education. But I guess for the three of you, you would not necessarily link innovation to technology per se as the silver bullet. I don't know, maybe Dieves, if you want to comment on that.
Yes, I think that for some time maybe we shared the wrong conversation. It looked like technology was, if we had technology in a classroom, then that was innovative education, and that was really a change from what we were doing in the past, and it was a wrong concept. We were just supplementing with technology an old model, traditional model that wasn't actually working very well, and it wasn't delivering anymore. And wasn't answering the needs of students and society. So we've had this kind of glasses on for some time. And still there is a debate whether technology will help us. It might help us if we use it intelligently, but it could also stop us from really going into the deep transformation that the education needs. Because it would stop us from saying, well, it's done, we have technology, this is a new kind of education. And it can be exactly the same thing, exactly the same thing. And that's why results haven't changed over the years. There's been huge investment from governments, companies, everyone in education, in technology, in education, and results are not any better than they used to be. And the reason is because nothing has changed in the essence of the pedagogy that needed to be changed. But of course, technology is also, if we use it intelligently, it's fantastic. It allows us, and we need it, because what's changed our students, and we need to understand that they have a new identity, is the use of this technology. And thankfully, that same technology that has changed them is a way for us to reach them where they are. And we need to use the same channels and ways of communication. Education, at the end of the day, is a communication process. So we need to be aligned with the channel and the media, and we have to be where they are and not somewhere else. And that's happening frequently. So technology, of course, helps us reach them where they are in their learning style, in the rhythm. It's a fantastic resource for doing a huge diversity of methodologies. So, of course, we need to employ technology, as we need to employ many more resources. But technology has to be there.
Okay, thank you, Stefanos. Do you want to quickly comment on that?
My metaphor for technology is that technology is Lamborghini. If you are a very good driver, you can go very fast to a destination you want. If you're a bad driver, you're going to die. That's what happens with technology. We're putting too much emphasis. But before you use technology, you have to be a very good driver, which means you have to have critical thinking. And more than that, what I call it, you have to be able to understand conditions, constraints, and what you want to accomplish. Otherwise, technology is going to give you a wrong impression of resolving any of the challenges in front of you. You're going to die, like the Lamborghini with a bad driver.
Okay. As I see that time is passing by, as I said earlier, not only do you have a vision of the education, but the three of you are on the ground on a daily basis. Could you tell us quickly, in each of your cases, well, tell us more about the model you're developing and why you think it's working, and eventually the challenges you're facing. Maybe let me start with you, Nieves. You work here in Spain. Inspire us on your models and how we can leave this room and take some of these insights from you and turn them into action.
Well, how are we walking the talk?
Exactly.
Because it needs to be walked. I mean, sometimes we hear too many conversations, and we really need to walk the talk. I have to say we have a good perspective in this lifelong learning cycle, because there's within SEK there's the schools and there's a university, and with big connections with the corporate world, companies, etc. So this allows us to have this different perspective into to a continuum, which is so important in the way we address education change. And then we have been established for over 100 years, but always with this tradition in innovation, as we say, and that's important. Having an innovative mind is not something that happens from one day to the other one. It needs to be part of a culture, of a certain ethos. Unfortunately, we work a lot with our whole community in growing this seed. We have a framework that we call, because framework needs to be there, even if we'll be talking about flexible, very personal learning models, there has to be a framework. Ours is what we call the Aula Inteligente, the intelligent classroom. Dates back to over 25 years ago. It was groundbreaking at the time and still is. So we can imagine how groundbreaking it was in the early 90s. Because it's a holistic approach to all dimensions of the education process, of the learning process. It tells us about the space, the use of resources, whether it's technological resources or not, tells us about the role of teachers and students, about learning communities. So it's really a holistic model, very open, very flexible, that allows us to interpret it in every, has allowed us to make an interpretation in every moment in time over the years.
And you have a feeling that this is effective, it's working,
Yeah,
the learning outcomes of your students is comparatively higher, better than other schools?
Yes, definitely. It's more engaging. It's a place where students, of course, work in completely different ways. It's more engaging for them. It's motivating them. It's bringing real world and real world challenges, as we heard just previously, into the classroom, which is of course different from the traditional classroom. But then there is three premises, I think, and those are important for our innovation model. One thing, it has to be bottom up. So it's nothing happens top down, we all know. So it has to be bottom up. So we work with small learning communities of teachers and students working together and trying to innovate and trying to bring up the solutions they need for the challenges they are facing. And I think that's a critical part. And then, because communities are this small when they work together, what we're talking is about real personal, very flexible models that really have to be personal. I even despise sometimes the word model, because it looks like it has to be like the same thing for everyone. And if there's one thing we know, it's different for everyone. And well.
Thank you, Nieves. Stefanos, very quickly, in a few minutes, on what you're trying to achieve in Athens.
Well, if you come to our campus, you'll see three things. You'll see dogs and students doing mathematics. You'll see students taking olive from the olive tree and creating olive oil, and then designing the box and the bottle, and then selling that, and the money go for the refugee kids. Or you can go to our theater and you can see the Truman trial, where our students, the 10th grade students, they put in trial Truman for the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, what does it mean, all that? It means students and faculty are the architects of their own learning. And I sit over there and support them and protect them for the parents, because the parents, they don't understand all of this, and therefore I have to stay there and say, leave the students and my faculty alone, come after me. Okay. That's what I do.
Can I come to your school? Yes. Okay. Vicky, what about you?
We had to learn how to transform complexity into very simple, manageable action, so that anything we did could be easily replicated by teachers. So we just brought these principles of good quality education into the basic education system of the rural schools of Colombia, where nothing new is, the philosophy is not new. It's just that these ideas come to the elite schools, but not to the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable. So we changed the concept of the educational act. It's really child-centered participatory learning. A new role of the teacher, we were forced to. The concept of time, we had to introduce flexibility so that children can finish academic units at their own pace. Not everybody learns the same thing at the same time in a classroom, and especially where you have heterogeneity in learning rhythms in the classroom. Act time, and then the concept of space and act, time and space. Children can learn in the community. So children become agents of change with their families, with their parents, because anything they learn has to be applied with their knowledge to home. So very simple things. And then if you go into a classroom, like you were mentioning, you see some children working independently, others in groups, always dialoguing because they're learning through dialogue. Well, this is why we had results. Colombia, when this was well implemented years ago as a national policy, was the only country after Cuba where rural education outperformed urban education. Now, this is not easily maintained afterwards, but at least we achieved that goal. And we still have the results in different regions where they're still performing. But the most important thing is, and this was published by the University of London, the impact of Escuela Nueva on peaceful citizenship behaviors of children. And coming out of Colombia, especially during a peace process, I think it's extremely important. So I want to touch the word citizenship. That's crucial. And we see that it's working. We just have to make it replicable. We need new actors, not only education ministers, not only the education sector, but others. We got the Coffee Growers Federation coming in. We get other actors, which are so crucial for maintaining.
I would even add, Vicky, that your Escuela Nueva model today is being used in how many countries in the world?
Well, it's inspired many educational reforms, mainly in Latin America, but also through Vietnam. And now we're working in Zambia and Liberia and Africa.
When people often ask me, give me one example of an innovation that has been replicated outside of its original context and almost globally, I often refer to you, Vicky.
But we had to make it easily replicable.
Good.
That's the most important part.
I'd like to take a few more. I mean, we have a few more minutes to take some questions and answers, and some questions from the audience, if you don't mind. So please, could you turn on the lights? I don't know if the hostesses are ready. I will take. So I'm going to take 3 questions in a row. I have the lady over there in blue, the gentleman here, and I'll take a question over there on the left. And if there's time, I'll come back. Yeah, so number 2, we'll start here then, I guess. Please.
Hi.
If you can introduce yourself and, quick introduction, short question.
Okay. I'm Vikramaditya from India. And as we talk, 28 to 29% of girls don't go to school in India. As I assume 3 of you, the Minister for the World, when we go through the reasons why the girls don't go to the school, there may be 100 reasons why they don't go to the school. But when you talk to the teachers and those who don't go to the school, they're the rural part of India. But we hardly give importance to the teachers. Do we ever talk about the salary structure? Do we ever think to increase the salary of the teachers? The big schools, the modern schools teachers might get good salary, but the schools in the rural pockets in India and Africa, they don't do it. So that's just a thought. Thank you.
A question on teachers. The lady in blue over there, yep, with your hands raised.
Good morning. My name is Ana Maria Lopez. I live in Spain. I have developed a language teaching system, and I have used this method to teach people from different languages. And I want to agree with you about the importance of teachers, as he also said. Because if you want to fight illiteracy in your country or in anyone, what we need is good teachers, because good teachers make good schools. So, of course, technology is very important, but I would rather prefer a very good teacher in a very old school than just the other way around. Of course, technology can help a lot. But what is really important, and I think that governments should focus on the formation of the teachers, because the multiplying effect of the teachers is so important that has to be the main goal of any education transformation that we want to challenge. Okay?
So
Thank you very much.
A second question on teachers. I'll take one last for this round on the top, number 1 over there. And then I saw two others' hands here. I'll come back to here after.
Good morning. My name is Lucila Gomez de Baeza. I represent SECOT, the Spanish Senior Executives Association. We are volunteers. And I congratulate the speakers for all they have said, really interesting suggestions. But I miss a word, which is knowledge. And I also miss another one, which is the transmission of experience. we run education programs and our seniors are the teachers. And the results of this mix, young people with early retired, is excellent. We run a very good program with Santander, with the Banco Santander, and many, many others. But I would like, I don't know, perhaps the minister would like to say something about this, and Vicky, if you would also be kind enough. I thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Since time is running out, we'll take the two other questions and we'll do one round of answers.
All right. Hello,
And if you have more, I see more hands raised, please don't hesitate to come and see the speakers after the session. We'll be spending the day together. There'll be time for that. So you gentlemen, and then the lady in dark over there, yes.
Hello, good morning. I am Carlos Ballesteros from Spain. I run the Service Learning Project at a Jesuit university here. And thank you for your inspiring comments, but I think I have not heard a word about mobility and diversity. Maybe it's because we assume that we are in a worldwide, but I think, or I want to stress the idea of education in the diversity and enhancing mobility of the students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And so one very last question from the lady in black over there. If you can pass the microphone on to her, please, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Bianca Traxler, and I'm a student at a business school. I just wanted to ask you, we get what the education is now. We kind of got also what is going to be afterwards, maybe. How do we get from one to the other? What is the pedagogical approach you're talking about? What are the changes we need to do? Thank you.
Okay, so I think there were two questions on teachers. Maybe if we start with that with a little bit of time remaining. And indeed, the three of you mentioned it in passing. Maybe Nieves or Stefanos, do you want to come back to the question on teachers and the importance of teachers? I mean,
not only the importance of teachers, but also our approach is the following. We form partnership with universities because the problem is not when you receive the teachers. The problem is when the teachers are really developed at the university. So, for example, as we speak, I have 18 university educational students who are doing the practicum in our school. So therefore, they have first-hand understanding what does it mean to have 52 different nationality students in one school and how you have to be a holistic teacher. So partnerships, 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 it is the solution in terms of preparing teachers.
thank you. Yes, one last comment, and then I can see that they're telling us that we need to move on.
Okay, well, again, I agree. I'm sorry, Sebastian, we're not disagreeing on anything, so no big debate. But anyway, I was going to say something very similar when I was talking about the perspective we have having schools and university, and this is what I call the engine for change within our own framework model, is how we work with teachers to be, through the School of Education that we have at university, because that's really the place where you can turn this circle into a virtuous circle. It's in teacher training schools, and Vicky mentioned this. It's so important. The work, for example, we do, where lots of applied research, action research, teacher training, but teacher training in a new methodology. What really teachers are learning to be teachers at schools. I mean, it's the same as a medical school. They really need to be performing before they are thrown sometimes into a classroom where they will have little guidance. So it's so important to change the whole teacher training system and the leadership. Leadership is extremely important for things to happen within a school once you get those beautifully trained teachers and who are ready for change. So that's what I call the engine for change.
Okay, thank you very much. For the questions we haven't been able to address, and in general, I really invite you to talk to the three of them after this session. Amazing projects, amazing people. Sorry, we will stop here. Please help me thank our three speakers. Thank you very much.